Hey, I'm Gary Tabakman. I'm a criminal defense lawyer here in Houston. I'm going to throw up 10 questions on the screen here that are the most common questions that I'm asked almost daily by clients or other individuals that are not clients that they need answers to. All right, let's get into it.
Gary, why shouldn't I just represent myself? Isn't it cheaper?
Sure, of course it's cheaper, but also you're going to get the result that you ultimately will receive based on representing yourself. I mean, there's a reason why people hire lawyers. We know certain things better than an individual that's facing one of the most taxing and most difficult challenges that they're ever going to have in their life. And oftentimes what I tell clients is that at the end of the day, it's not about the money. It's about the result that you're seeking. And usually you get what you pay for.
But what if I'm innocent? Do I even need a lawyer?
Well, that's kind of a silly question, but yeah, I mean, that one is asked not pretty often, but it is oftentimes asked. And even if you're innocent, the reality behind it is that you may have all the confidence in the world in yourself and in your case that, well, there's no way that this is going to go south, or there's no way that they're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And at the end of the day, whenever the government is coming after you, whether it's the state or the federal government, they have all the resources in the world in order to make sure that they can get you into a place where it's uncomfortable for you, and they can pin you up against the wall. And oftentimes, even if you're innocent, things can go south pretty quickly if you don't have an expert to properly guide you and help evaluate your situation.
Isn't it true that public defenders are just as good as private attorneys?
So it's a valid question, and I think obviously everybody is in this career for different reasons, and they approach this career differently. I would never make it a process of mine to speak poorly upon individuals that are not hired to do the work and that are appointed to do the work. A lot of public defenders do the work because they truly believe in the system and in the process. They love the work that they do, and they're just as committed as everybody else in advocating for clients on appeal. And of course they do a phenomenal job. The difference is that we just have different approaches. We have different time calculations and different timetables on how we can get something done. I find that public defenders are oftentimes very overworked, and they're overwhelmed with the amount of material that they have to go through, which may not be conducive to certain individuals that are looking for lawyers that will dedicate themselves more to you individually and more tailored to your case or your circumstances or to your family, whatever you may have going on. And if you need someone to be advocating for you and be ready for you whenever you call or wherever you email, and you want questions answered quickly, it's important to have a lawyer that's there for you and available for you and is aware of all the facts and circumstances behind your case.
Gary, can hiring you really change the outcome of my case?
Absolutely, it could change the outcome of your case. I mean, this is the main reason why people obviously hire lawyers, because they expect for there to be a change, or at the very least an outcome that they're seeking in their case. Me individually, I feel that I have had many years of experience now, enough experience in dealing with different types of cases and different types of individuals and clients, and also obviously going into all types of different courtrooms all over the state and this country, that gives me an invaluable experience on knowing what your case may need. The results speak for themselves. I feel that I've attained really great results, exceptional results for individuals that are facing some of the harshest possible prison time. And obviously, if you find yourself in that space where this question is not properly answered for you, then you should probably go the other way.
And speaking of results, Gary, is there a certain case that you're most proud of, or that you had the craziest result, or
the most unexpected outcome potentially, or where people have thought
there was no chance?
There's no chance, and then there's you kind of pull out a miracle out of a hat. So I can't say that there's one specific case. I mean, I think that there is definitely multiple cases, at least a handful, where either myself or a group of lawyers that were working on a particular case together may have thought that the likelihood of an outcome here is not very high. A likelihood of a good outcome is not very high. But through time and diligence and through an understanding of how to navigate a particular case from the very get-go, we were ultimately able to achieve an outcome that was completely unexpected in a positive way for a client or my client. And I think that those are circumstances that are mostly within the federal court context, because in a federal case, you oftentimes have almost a predetermined kind of navigating map of what a case may look like or how it develops. And there was a handful of cases where I was able to attain either probation or dismissals that have obviously resulted in a situation where you gain a lot of respect from clients and from U.S. attorneys and judges alike.
Gary, what's the first thing you do when you take on a new case?
The very first thing that I do is I get to know my client and the family as intimately as I can, because I want to make sure that I understand not only the anticipated goals of what we're trying to accomplish, but I also want to understand who I'm working for in order to help them advocate their position much better. If I don't know you as a person and I don't know your background or I don't know your family circumstances, it's almost impossible for me to go into a courtroom and start communicating about you or your case or what I would like to see happen with your case with someone that ultimately holds all the decision-bearing cards in their hand. So that's the very first thing I would do, is I would have a breakdown in an intimate conversation with everybody in order to be able to get a better global picture of where we're at.
And Gary, if I hire you, how much control do I actually have over my case?
So I think perfectly valid question and also a fairly easy and difficult one to answer, because at the end of the day, your case is your case. You have the autonomy to choose a different lawyer in the event that you feel like your case isn't going in the direction that you want to go. But you have as much control as you need based on the type of communication and the amount of communication that you have with your attorney, right? If you're paying your legal fees and you are proactive in asking the right questions and you're respectful and there's a collaborative approach of what you'd like to see happen, and you understand that things take time, you will have as much access and control over the things that you would like to see happen as possible. As far as control is concerned, there are just certain things that are just completely out of your control. The things that are out of your control, when your case may go to trial, is primarily out of your control, because it's out of my control as well, and it's at the control of the system and the courts and the court system. As an example, I've had cases that sit on the docket for 3, 4, 5 years just due to unexpected circumstances such as hurricanes or COVID or whatever it is that may have happened that may delay the court system altogether, right? So you don't have control over certain things. You may have control over the decision-making process of, do I want a jury or judge trial? Do I want to testify at my trial? So those things you have full control and autonomy over. Strategic making decisions is a collaborative effort. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with you following your lawyer's advice and understanding why you hired that individual in order to help you formulate a better strategy. That's important. But at the end of the day, I think clients have a vast amount of control as far as what they like to see happen, but they have to understand that not everything is within that scope and that space.
Gary, do prosecutors go easier on people who don't hire aggressive lawyers?
I think prosecutors go easier on people when they hire lawyers that are respected. And what I mean by that, it's not that they all of a sudden start to sympathize with an individual. When prosecutors communicate with lawyers, and likewise with judges that communicate with lawyers that they know are capable of doing the job, but not only are they capable, they also are honest. They advocate from a position of strength and not a position of weakness. There isn't some bombastic approach of where you have come in order to just kind of exploit your own ego approach of just wanting your name to be out there. You're much more likely to achieve a result on behalf of a client when you have respect. And so, with that question, I mean, obviously it's not a directly easy answer, but when you hire someone that's respected, you're much more likely to get the result that you want.
So that brings up another question in my mind, Gary. What makes a lawyer earn respect? Is it respect from the judges, from the jury, from the other lawyer, from the prosecution team, or clients? Or
I think that, so first of all, a lot of it starts with your own sort of colleagues and, as much as we could consider maybe the defense bar, lawyers that respect you, that have worked with you, that know about you, that can help, not that can help, but that are comfortable in saying, like, you've hired a good lawyer, you won't go wrong with that person. That's a sign of respect to the fact that the work that you've done and the work that you do and continue to do is something that people take notice of, and they feel confident in you and who you are. If you find yourself in that space, then you're in good hands. Obviously, getting praise from judges, prosecutors, individuals that you've worked with is a huge benefit to hiring the lawyer that you're ultimately considering. But yeah, I mean, as a community, in the work that we do, you definitely want your name to be heard of in positive ways as opposed to negative ones. So do your due diligence, do your research. When you talk to lawyers, or you're potentially looking around and you're shopping for lawyers, what I always tell clients is, hey, listen, like if you go talk to Mr. Smith next door, ask him about Mr. Tabakman and see what he thinks, right? It'll tell you everything about that you need to know.
Gary, what do you say to people who think hiring a lawyer is just about knowing a judge or cutting deals?
I think that it's not an uncommon perception of what happens in this business. I think it's a little silly as well, but at the end of the day, I mean, just like any other business, it's about relationships. And sure, there are some places, and specifically in smaller counties, maybe there's a little bit of hand dealing behind closed doors that are going on. For the most part, though, I find that it's, in my experience, even when I go to smaller counties as somebody that's unknown, judges, they respect good work and they respect good lawyering, and they'll do their research about who you have hired. If you come in with somebody that is unknown, that they'll find out pretty quickly. And so I think that that's a big misconception in this line of work. And I think that it's kind of an overly broad approach to think that, well, just because I'm hiring this lawyer and they may be friends with this judge or they may be friends with this prosecutor, then I'm certainly going to get a much better outcome in this situation. I don't find that to be the case. In fact, oftentimes that could backfire because lawyers that frequently practice in front of the same judge or that frequently deal with the same prosecutors, right? It would only make sense that those judges, those prosecutors become more apprehensive of constantly giving somebody what they want and what they're being asked for, because then it becomes just a complete kind of like one note approach of, well, I'm going to give favors to this particular person. I think you're much more likely to succeed with someone that has kind of multifaceted across the board practice of where they're in many different courts, they practice and they deal with many different prosecutors. They don't have overly close relationships with any of them. They may know them, they may be friendly with them, but they don't spend weekend getaways at some hunting lodge with these individuals. So that's the way that I would approach that.
Gary, if I can only afford the bare minimum, what's the most important thing I should know before choosing a defense attorney?
If you can only afford the bare minimum, I think that oftentimes what you probably want to do is not pay the bare minimum and maybe go along with getting a court-appointed lawyer. There's nothing wrong with choosing to go that route. Do your research about the court-appointed lawyer. Oftentimes, court-appointed lawyers they're not doing only court-appointed work. A lot of times they have their practices that are fully flourishing practices where most of their work is hired work, and they have good reputations, and you may luck out with someone that's a really stellar attorney. So don't just jump into a space of where you feel like, well, I need to get a free world, as I hear a lot of clients saying, I need to get a free world lawyer. It's not about that. It's about you truly doing your research about who's fighting for you, who's advocating for you. Yeah, those are the 10 most common questions that I get from potential clients. If you have any other suggestions or any other questions that you want to ask, just comment on the comments below or click on the link and call me for a free consultation. Thanks.